So this session is Leaders at Every Level with Virginia Sharp March. I'll hand it over to Virginia and we'll get things set up for y'all.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you to Devin and NC Live and the NCLA LAMS for allowing me to share in this leadership series. I was able to sit in and watch Christy and Molly earlier today. Hopefully you caught one, or if not both of them, both very insightful. And hopefully what I'm going to tell you this afternoon is going to bring it all together. But welcome those, Louisiana, Wisconsin, I know is here, Illinois. Welcome, welcome. Today, a lot of information's been shared. And it's the hope of each one of us speakers that we've said something that motivates you to take action. And to take action, I'm going to challenge you today with this acronym, ACT. So when you hear something that you need to apply, put an A next to it. When you hear something that you need to change, put a C next to it. And when you hear something that you need to teach somebody, put a T next to it. And then rank the top 3 from each webinar and then act accordingly. Because we can take in all this information, but until we act, we're not going to make progress. So let me share about myself. As Devin said, I'm Virginia Sharp March. I'm the owner of VSM Coaching and Consulting. I have 30 years of public library experience, 25 as a director, most recently at the Onslow County Public Library in Jacksonville, North Carolina. So how did I become a librarian? My bachelor's degree is in home economics with a specialty in fashion interior merchandising. And at the time, my family was living in Cheyenne, Wyoming. There's not many opportunities there to use such a degree. The Laramie County Library System had a part-time position open for which I applied, was hired, and then eventually became full-time. The director and assistant director there gave me so many opportunities with special projects, professional training. They saw that potential in me. And then when my family moved back to Ohio, which is where I'm originally from, Northeast Ohio, I chose to stick with librarianship and receive my master's from Kent State University. I would not be here today if it weren't for those mentors and people along the way that encouraged me. And as I've progressed through my career and taken on leadership roles, I love to mentor others and give back to them. I believe that each of us have leadership skills within us. We just need to believe in ourselves and take the time to develop that leader. Today, we're going to talk about how we can be leaders at any level, no matter our title or responsibilities. Each of us possesses strengths, which can benefit our organizations, our communities, and our profession. By discussing the different styles of leadership and characteristics of good leaders, I hope that you will feel empowered to lead no matter your title or level within your organization. And I want to point out, I didn't put my face in on this slide because you're going to see me for the next hour, but you might see one of these 2 walk by. We have 2 COVID kitties. They've been with us for 2 years. If I shut the door, they're going to sit out there and cry. So you might just see one of them walk through, but that's Belle and Blue. They're siblings that were adopted from the Craven County Animal Shelter. Now we are going to have a bit of fun. I'm going to switch over to the Menti. Okay, as Devin mentioned, we're going to be doing this. You want to go to menti.com and use the code 3461549. We're going to do this or that with TV bosses. Here we go. All right, so you can vote. Who would you rather have as your boss? Lou Grant from the Mary Tyler Moore Show or Louis De Palma from Taxi? I know these might be a little bit older for some of you, but hopefully on your local streaming that you've probably seen them or familiar with them. Give a few more minutes. I see right now Lou Grant is winning the bill.
Question is just which boss you'd rather work for. So
Yes, yeah.
more of a warm up.
This isn't a test. This is just for fun. Okay.
I guess people had to Google some of these old guys.
Yeah. All right. Okay, looks like Lou Grant is winning this one. Now we're going to give you another option here. Maybe some of you who didn't know the other two might know one of these two. Michael Scott from The Office or Leslie Knope from Parks and Recreation. Who would you rather be your boss? Definitely Leslie is winning out here.
Folks, if you're just joining us, we're just doing a Mentimeter, this or that, of which TV boss you'd pick to work for. Just a warm up before we get into the details of the session.
Okay. Let's go ahead and go on to the next one. It looks like Leslie was the winner here. If you are a Ted Danson fan, perhaps you remember him as Sam Malone from Cheers, or maybe you saw him just recently as Neil Bremer from the Mr. Mayor. Perhaps Cheers was more televised than Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor was just a short-lived two-season special.
It's funny, my dog's name is Ted Danson. So he got a little perked up by that.
Okay. Two more slides. How about Liz Lemon from 30 Rock or Olive Pope from Scandal? All right, Liz Lemon's definitely winning out there. I think two
Well, she
very
didn't
different
about
types. What was that, Laura?
She didn't kill anybody or hide anybody.
That's okay, Patricia. My whole program's not going to be around TV. All right. And one more. How about two extremes? Don Michael Corleone from The Godfather or Tony Soprano from The Sopranos? Well, they're pretty well equal so far. Okay, fairly equal, but Tony Soprano more so than The Sopranos. Maybe Laura has pointed out, maybe he didn't kill as many people as Don Michael Corleone. All right. Okay, so maybe hopefully we haven't had a boss or a supervisor who's extreme as some of these examples, but it's always good to have a sense of humor and ability to get along with others when you're a leader. And perhaps it'd be better just to talk about these TV bosses around the water cooler rather than become one of them. Today, we're going to be exploring the styles of leader. So depending on where you do the research, there are multiple types of leaders. Democratic, autocratic, authoritative, innovative, bureaucratic, laissez-faire, pace-setting, affiliative, coaching, altruistic, servant leader. I mean, we could have studied so many types. Today, we're going to focus on 3 styles of leaders as outlined by Kurt Levine's leadership framework from the 1930s. Autocratic, democratic, bureaucratic, and laissez-faire. A quiz was sent to you for those who registered for the workshop. If you did not receive it, Devin, could you always share that PDF again? Because we'll follow up with it in a bit. Right now, we're going to
I can
view these
definitely.
styles of leaders. So Kurt Levine was a German-American psychologist known as a pioneer of social organizational applied psychology. He was one of the first to study group dynamics and organizational development. He believed that groups can alter the behavior of its members. There's a lot to be said about group influence or peer pressure. For those of you that are in college football, recently Tennessee beat Alabama the first time in over 16 years. And if you happen to watch that game, afterwards, the goalposts were torn down. And then a group of participants, students, they carried that goalpost first around the stadium and then out the stadium and into the river. Now, how many people probably went to that game that day and said, that's what they're going to do if they win? However, that's the pressure. That's what group influence can do. On the opposite side, if someone is acting in a way that doesn't conform to the group norm, they can be ignored and allow their actions to break down into the group trust. Or the group can influence them for a change. Think of someone in your organization. I know earlier Christy talked about someone who always arrived late and how it impacts everybody. Think of someone in your organization who tends to be really rude to people. If this is ignored and just accepted, there's going to be a break of trust amongst the workplace. But if it's dealt with, the trust is reestablished and the work environment becomes more pleasant. So Levine studied these group dynamics and how the types of leadership could influence the group. Democratic and participative. This is where the decisions are based on input from the team. They build consensus throughout the organization from all levels before making a decision. The leader still has the final decision. However, everyone has the opportunity to provide input. It can be a very effective type of leadership because it's inclusionary. The drawback is that sometimes building consensus can take a long process. Keeping in mind, someone is still responsible for that final decision. Levine found that there's more enjoyment and cooperation under this style of leadership. A few examples of leaders: Nelson Mandela. He encouraged people of all colors and political affiliations to contribute to the movement. Steve Jobs 2.0, when he returned to Apple in 1997, he was much more democratic than when he first ran the company, where his style was more autocratic. He was able to adapt his leadership style to the stage of the company. Autocratic. Autocratic is the opposite of democratic. This type of leadership is good in emergency situations because you have to make tough decisions when the team is not very knowledgeable. Though this type of leader can be intimidating, staff can feel micromanaged, intimidated, which could cause lower morale. Levine found more dissatisfaction in groups governed by the autocratic, and the group behaviors can become aggressive or apathetic. Here are two extremes within our world today: Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. Lyndon B. Johnson was also known to be autocratic. He was very aggressive and was able to get legislation passed because of this style of leadership. Bureaucratic. This is where the leader follows the rules. They may gather input from the staff, but they're going to reject it if it goes against policy. And there's a definite division of labor, which could decrease innovation because there's a resistance to change. There is less favoritism in this type of leadership. Some examples of bureaucratic leadership could be our military, different government entities. Someone mentioned in one of the first sessions, labor unions. Those are definitely bureaucratic. Winston Churchill was a bureaucratic leader. He depended on structures and systems to get things done. And Colin Powell was one. This was learned through his military experience, and he believed that a system could be created to make successes more likely and a more efficient organization. Laissez-faire. This is where the group members have total freedom. The leaders do not participate in the decision-making process. If this group is highly motivated, it can be successful. Think of group projects in college. The professor would give the group the project and then step back and allow the group dynamics to take over. Sometimes members would jockey for roles and responsibilities. Sometimes there would be people that would do their work and others that would not. Those that were in this group had neutral satisfaction. They weren't always productive. Good examples, Warren Buffett. He's well known for hiring professionals to help apply his principles with his Berkshire Hathaway products. And a lot of our tech companies are laissez-faire. They give a lot of creativity, freedom to their company. I believe that the style of leadership sets the tone for the organization. Molly mentioned organizational culture in her presentation. And this is someone setting the culture. When the leader adjusts the style of leadership, it can change the whole mood and the productivity for the group. A good leader will also adapt the style to fit the situation. For example, a leader who might be more democratic, they're going to have to become autocratic in an emergency. Say an alarm is going off somewhere in your library facility. Everyone rushes to gather together to discuss it. Now, is that the time to create consensus as to who's going to do what? No, you need a leader that's going to say, you need to go find out the source of it. You need to call 911. You need to take care of the system at the alarm panel. So at that time, an autocratic leader is going to be best served. On the basis of all of his research, Levine found that the democratic was the best for what people enjoyed the most and they felt the most freedom. Now, hopefully you've taken the test. We are going to see what is your dominant leadership style. So going to the menti.com, use the code 899998960 and let us know what is your dominant leadership style. And Anna got a three-way tie. Is it working?
So I was able to vote, but
Okay.
so a way to like refresh it maybe.
Okay, let me go into Menti. There we go. Okay, is it starting to fill on the slide in the PowerPoint?
No, I'm not seeing it
Okay,
yet.
I'm going to switch over so everyone can see it.
All right, there we go. Yep.
All right. All right. Wow, this is great. We definitely have a larger amount of democratic, participatory type leader. Was anyone surprised with their leadership style? And consider your dominant style. Brandy said she has two. How comfortable are you with that style? Oh, very good. And if you mentioned that you have a couple dominant, and that could be that you can easily adjust depending on the situation. I like that. I like to lead how I like to be led.
I think what was interesting about the document too that you shared was the fact that like it shows kind of the consequences of different leadership styles, particularly with that autocratic one, seeing, you know, people maybe not feeling as confident in sharing things, high rates of absenteeism, things like that.
Yes. Oh, there it is now. As Devin mentioned, yeah, when you think about the different strengths and weaknesses, if you're liking where you're at, then focus in on those strengths. And that's what we're going to talk about further. If you're seeing those weaknesses, that's an area where you can strengthen, you can help yourself do some personal growth. Now, we all have leadership qualities within us. Whether you recognize it or not, you might be saying, but I'm not a leader. But I'm here to tell you that those are just some assumptions. Each of you can be a leader, no matter what your job title or role. And a leader is someone who's going to influence others for the good or for the bad. You can influence both ways. People will follow other people because of the influence they have on them. So what are some of these assumptions? One, I'm not a born leader. We do know some that are natural leaders, whether, like I said, be good or bad. But all of us have that potential to become leaders. To become leaders, we need to develop it, to nurture it. And this can be done by knowing ourselves, knowing our strengths and weaknesses, and then taking that time for that personal growth to develop the leader within you. Another assumption, I don't have the title or seniority. You're thinking, if I'm hired for that job, I'll immediately become a leader. Not true. Think about the leaders within your own library system. They were appointed into that position, whether it be the skills or the hiring process. Are they all great leaders? Just because one has a title does not make them a great leader. I do not have the experience. The assumption that work experience makes you a great leader. Let's reflect on those in your organization and worked there the longest. Just because they've been there the longest, does that make them the best leaders? Some yes, but some no. Longevity does not make one the best leader. Unfortunately, some workers are going to feel entitled based on their seniority, but it's not always best for this organization. It may be easy at times for hiring just to put someone into that position because they've been there the longest, but sometimes in the long run, it's not the best for the organization. Last assumption, I need a specific position before I can start developing as a leader. If you wait until that leadership opportunity comes along, it's too late. You need to be developing those skills right now, right where you're at. So tell me in the chat, perhaps a hobby that you have. Okay, hiking, good. Karaoke, baking, traveling, swimming. Excellent. Piano. Each one of these that you've mentioned, you had to start somewhere, right? Especially piano. And unless you were someone special, you had to sit down, you had to learn the notes, you had to learn the scales. And then what did you do? You specifically progressed to learn more. And then you worked on it. And that's the same way with leadership. You have to start where you're at and find that opportunities to improve. Maybe it's through coaching or mentoring, through listening to podcasts, reading books. And then you can apply that information, those skills that you're learning through volunteer opportunities, short-term projects, doing programs at the library, whatever it is, wherever you want to develop. This way, you're going to be ready for when that opportunity arrives. We're going to do another Menti. I want you to think of someone that you admire, and you're going to list up to 3 of their traits. And the code is 4305-3287. Yep. 4305-3287. Okay, I'm going to, it's coming in once again on the one screen. Here we go. We've got patient, funny, confident, encouraging, collaborative, knowledgeable, kind, calm, integrity. Good. Courteous, confident, approachable. Wonderful. Fair, smart, driven, honest, trustworthy, self-aware. Excellent. Excellent. Flexible. All of these are important aspects of a good leader. And this will continue to build. And we'll make sure that we'll include this slide when we're done for everybody. Self-aware, collaborative. There it is. But we're going to dive into a few of these traits, and perhaps even a few that maybe you didn't even mention. Communication. Yes, without communication, organizations have lost revenue, there's increased turnover, lost productivity, and low trust. Perhaps you've seen these. You don't know what you don't know, or I don't know what I don't know. I know, I don't know, or you don't know. These have been made popular in the past few years, and it references material that we are unaware of or uncertain about. We'll make decisions based on the information that we know and the information that we don't know. Think about it. We make decisions based on the information that we know and the information that we don't know. It's all in our perspective. For example, you have a spouse, you have a new employee, a new colleague, and they mention a spouse or a partner. Well, perhaps that new coworker is female, where does your assumption go? Perhaps that their spouse or partner is male. If you take that assumption and it's wrong, that creates miscommunications. Within organizations, when there's effective communication flowing from a leader to the workers, and amongst the workers, there's going to be less surprises. And with fewer misunderstandings, our patrons are served better. Then there's better trust. In every action, we can increase trust or decrease trust. No matter our job title or position, we need to communicate with one another. It helps us make better decisions and it helps us work better together. When we have honest communication, we establish that trust. We're going to talk about the trust model. Perhaps some of you have seen this. It's the Johari window, Johari, however you want to pronounce it. And it's actually named after the two gentlemen who created it, Joseph Luft and Harry Ingram. In 1955, they were UCLA psychologists, and they were researching group dynamics. So in the top window, where there's open communication, I know and you know, we have a shared knowledge. When we first meet each other, that box is going to be pretty small. It's going to be very small because we don't know a lot about each other. But as we get to know each other, that box is going to expand. In our blind spot areas, there's spots for self-discovery. I don't know, but you know. So if I ask the right questions and work together well with you, we're going to move from this box over into the open communication. Then there's the hidden area. I know, but you don't know. Now, this is an area where trust can be broken down, especially if you're a leader. If you know something and you're not sharing it with your people that work under you, they're not going to have a lot of trust. This tends to be a place where there's people with less confidence like to hide. They're afraid that something's going to happen if they give out too much information. And then there's the area for potential. I don't know, and you don't know. And this occurs when something surprising happens, a crisis. Every day, a new patron is going to walk through that door and we don't know what's going to happen. But if we've had open communication and have worked well together, when we get to areas here, it's going to go well. It's going to go well because we have that trust and we know we've got each other's back. So keep that in mind. We all want to work towards that open communication, sharing it to prevent the surprises, conflict, and misunderstandings. Think about other assumptions that you may have made based on these blind spots, which could have created conflict or misunderstandings. Perhaps there's an incident with a patron, and you may have taken care of it. They didn't like their fine, so you worked through to an agreement. But you may want to share that with your other coworkers or even your supervisor, just in case that patron comes back with something negative based on that experience. So, yes, you may have handled it, but let's not have surprises. Once again, you don't know what you don't know, so share so that there's that area of trust. Another good leadership trait, character. And a lot that you mentioned in that word cloud falls under character. How do you establish trust? And I love this by Theodore Roosevelt. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It means to say that you can understand their perspective, their circumstances, but it doesn't mean anything unless you walk and work alongside them. Think of a new director that you've had at your library. In the short term, which one is going to be more successful? The one that comes out and meets you in your environment at your desk, asks you the questions, works alongside of you, or the director that stays in their office, working and doing whatever they're doing, The one that's going to be more successful in the short term is that director that has came out and worked alongside you, because they have shown that they're interested in you. They're asking questions. They want to learn about you personally. Leaders could say that they have an open door policy, which is great. However, they also still need to be walking out their door, connecting to others in the organization, gaining that trust. Trust is gained through paying attention, listening, and through gestures of genuine care and connection. The empathy that was brought up earlier. Integrity is another part of your character. Do your words and actions align? Do you follow through with commitments? What do you say about others when they're not in the room? This goes along with trust. Humility. Do you talk, is it we or I? We all love recognition. However, we're part of a team. Does your leader admit their mistakes and learn from them? Humility comes with maturity. Our society focuses on the winners and succeeding. It always highlights the successful ones. This isn't a problem, but as we learn and mature, we learn that success is not just the wins. It's the giving the value to others and supporting them to their wins. Next character, problem solver. This is one of my favorites. I would come into the library in the morning and find an out of order sign on something. No note, no initials, nothing to say, why is that out of order sign on it? How many have ever been in that situation? I think it's fantastic that people have the faith that they think we're clairvoyants and we'll just figure out why that out of order sign is there. But now we have to become detectives. So think about it. Are you a problem creator or a problem solver? Perfect scenario. Staff member comes into your office and says, the toilet's clogged. You ask, well, what have you done about it? And they go, I'm telling you, it's not my problem. Staff number two, they come in and they tell you the toilet's clogged. I place an out of order sign on the bathroom. You ask, so what type of clog? What's the situation? And they say, I don't know, but the patron told me it was clogged, so I just put an out of order sign in the bathroom. Then you got the other one, the other staff member. They're going to come in, tell you the toilet's clogged. I went in and checked on it. It's not overflowing. I placed an out of order sign on it, and I've contacted asset facility management to take care of it. I want that staff number three. They have tried to solve the problem as much as they could within their realm, their scope. Now, this might be simplifying it, but everyone can take action. Just even to fully assess the situation and give a report and then say, what can I do to help? So be a problem solver. And if you're not going to do something about a problem, you might want to quit complaining. There could be an issue at work or something in your own life. And if it really matters to you, you're going to find a way to correct that situation. And yes, there's going to be times when you're going to discuss the problem, but let the person know you just want a sounding board. Maybe you don't want a solution at that time. So in an environment where information can be shared, the vision is going to be clear and expectations will be discussed, and you're going to feel empowered to make those decisions. So don't be afraid of problems. They're learning opportunities. Each one of us has that ability to solve problems. Sometimes we may not have the authority. However, we can influence the decision makers. Be observant, ask questions. Keep track of those no questions. Are there certain questions that patrons continually ask over and over and the answer is always no? Is there a way to get to yes? Be inquisitive. Find out how other libraries do it. Think outside the box. At my previous library, we had set up to become a lending library with NC Cardinal. So for those of you outside the state of North Carolina, NC Cardinal is a statewide consortium for public libraries. And we had just started the resource sharing, sending material out every day through, at the time was UPS, now it's through FedEx. When we first began, we were only sending it out 2 days a week because that's what a lot of the other libraries were doing. We had a new head of public services who came with a retail background. And she started looking at this process through the lens of the customer. Her perspective was that customers should not have to wait for those holds. The quicker they receive the material, the happier they would be. So she worked with staff to create a system of processing the material and send them out in a timely fashion. So by changing her perspective from a library staff member to the viewpoint of the customer, the patrons were happier and the staff was able to work together to find the system that works. So don't be afraid to try new things. Adjust as you go along. Nothing's going to be perfect, and there's always room for improvement. Positive attitudes. So reflect on some of the leaders, staff members. We've already said some traits earlier, even family members that you respect and admire. What type of attitude do they have? Are they Debbie Downers? Negative Nellies? Do they always find something wrong with that situation? Or are they finding something positive in every situation? Who do you prefer to be around? People with positive attitudes are encourager. They instill hope in everybody. They're committed to the group, and they demonstrate resiliency in challenging times. Having a positive attitude does not mean one is happy all the time. It means that one maintains a positive vision even when things get tough. And as Molly mentioned earlier in hers, there is something with being positive that releases that dopamine within your brain where the negative will shut it down. The pessimist is going to shut it down. Keep in mind guarding your comments. Do you complain or whine a lot? Yes, there's going to be times when we need to express our dissatisfaction, but do you remain in that mode or do you move on? For those who remain in the whiners or the complainers, listen when you're talking. Observe people around you. Are they still engaged or have they become silent? Have they slowly walked away? My daughters would come home from school complaining about teachers or a student, and I'd always ask them, find the good in that person, acknowledge their strengths and try to focus in on that. It's similar to taking those complaints and whining and finding the gratitude in that situation. Who's planned and presented and put a lot of your heart into a program for your library, only to have a few people show up? I think we've all been there. All the work that you put into the planning and prepping just for a few attendees, don't focus on those numbers, focus on the quality. And what did the participants obtain during that program? Did they learn something new? Did they connect to somebody else? Learn from this situation and make improvements for the future. Think of your natural tendency. Do you control your attitude or does it control you? Molly mentioned the law of achievement. There's going to be obstacles. We need to find a way to overcome those obstacles to reach the goals. And there's always a solution, and optimists have a better chance of finding that solution. Personal development. A good leader is going to always be looking for that options for personal development, knowing yourself. My daughter and I participated in a Spartan race several years ago. And we did fairly well. I had trained, but there were still some obstacles I could not do. The monkey bars, the rope climb, and the spear throwing. Well, they've talked to me and they're like, are we going to do it again this year? Possibly. But if we do, I found my weaknesses. I found my weak spots. And I'm going to train for those so that next time I can do better. A good leader knows their strengths and weaknesses. There are multiple tests out there to evaluate those. Strength finders, DISC method, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, just to name a few. Each one of it has its own areas of expertise, and depending on what you are looking for to help determine which one to take. Find the one that works and then act upon it. What I mean by act upon it, I know I took a Myers-Briggs many years ago, but I never really looked at it and applied it to my life. So if you take one of these, truly look it over and look at the areas where you can improve. I recently took a DISC assessment. And one of my areas of weakness is perfection. Everybody with perfection weakness, raise your hand. So that leaning towards perfection then delays me in making decisions because I tend to over-research to find the perfect answer. It also delays me from getting started because I want to do everything perfect from the beginning without any errors. But I'm learning to be proactive and start without all the answers and start where I'm at. Here, I can make improvements and adjustments along the way. Personality tests can also help a team function better together. Results will show how we make decisions. So in that DISC assessment, someone with a C is very data oriented, and that's my husband. He is off the chart with his C. And I'm an S. I'm a people person. So he wants all the data before making any decisions. And I want to know, how are the people involved, how it's going to affect them. When we know each other's personality types, we can work better together, and that communication is going to improve. Having one of these tests can also help you with your personal growth. Maybe a weakness of yours is having difficult conversations with others, just as Christy mentioned earlier. So you can take a look for books and trainings that will help you develop those skills to face those conversations. And if it speaks to you, I know she mentioned Crucial Conversations. I would also mention Radical Candor, and it's in my resources. Radical Candor really helps you to do it with a little bit of humanity involved. John Maxwell says that personal growth increases hope. It teaches us that tomorrow can be better than today. So when we are intentional and consistent with that growth, we'll continue to be more successful, not just in our professional lives, but our personal lives as well. If you intend to learn a foreign language, using transparent language from NC Live, doing it 10 minutes a week is not going to find success. But if you do it 10 minutes a day, you're going to have greater success. So personal growth is in your hands. No one can do it for you. Hopefully your organization will allow you time to attend sessions like this. I know the state library has lots of great opportunities that are at no cost. And then it's up to you to act upon them. Remember, A is something to apply, C, something to change, and T, something to teach. So where do you go from here? Most importantly, have the confidence and belief in yourself that you're a leader. Whether it be the leader of just you, your family, volunteers at your organization, or your direct reports, you are a leader. If you're not feeling that confidence, take the time to discover your strengths and weaknesses, then intentionally work to improve yourself and grow yourself. Action and consistency will bring positive results. Remember, this is a journey. It's not a destination. You'll not become a leader and then just stop. You'll continue to evolve and develop. And each one of us has value. And once you discover your value, you can become that leader and help others to discover that value within them. There are my resources. I'm just going back to look at, Allison mentioned point of paralysis when it comes to perfection. Absolutely. Sometimes you just have to draw a line or give yourself a time frame. If you're going to be researching something, say, okay, I'm going to give it 30 minutes and then act.
Sorry to cut in, Virginia. We had a question or kind of comment that was, how do you work with staff who struggle with the necessary bureaucratic evils of the workplace?
The necessary bureaucratic evils of the workplace. I mean,
that was my question. I just said, you know, we live in, if you work for county government, which I do, there's a framework that we live in, and that's where we live, and that's where we operate, and that's their policies. And, you know, I have a little control over that. And I'm struggling with one person who is treating it like her personal business. Like she can just, so it was just kind of a comment, not a major
Right.
question.
Okay. But you're right. Sometimes it is very difficult to remain positive in those type of situations, especially when you worked with your staff to create a program and perhaps you're not getting the recognition, or perhaps leadership above you is putting their spin on it or some limitations. It does become difficult to stay positive at that time. So you find a way, sometimes you have to pause, take a step back, and reflect back to your mission. And hopefully by reflecting back on your mission, it's going to find a way to move forward.
Mhm.
We have a question. How do you recommend folks navigate a rigid hierarchical structure, particularly when a person isn't in a traditional leadership role?
Okay.
Virginia,
trying
that's
to-
my question.
Yeah, go
And,
ahead, Allison.
well, the reason I ask it is while it was mentioned earlier that folks in North Carolina might not have as much experience with a union environment, my university is extremely unionized, and oftentimes the assuming best intent only goes so far before you can just know that people are relying on the union to back them up. So behavior gets to just get to be like it's accepted because that's who that person is, right? Or you have to do it because you fit into this slot and you don't have any room to move unless it's a higher up kind of promotion. So I've tried very hard to be to emulate some of these leadership qualities, but I'm not in any traditional leadership role in the nature of my job. And often I get pushback from peers like, who are you to tell me, this great idea? You're not my boss, and I'm going to fall back on my union if you keep pushing.
Mhm.
Does that give a little bit more
Yep,
context?
yeah, it does. And that is a sticky wicket, isn't it? Perhaps buy-in strategically, looking at people, say you want to make a change or want to implement something, strategically look for those people that could support you, and then slowly start building that team to help you then move it forward. But I can see where that happens. As I mentioned at one point, it's like just because someone's been there for years and years doesn't make them the best leader. And unfortunately, there's, yes, some people that rather than working for the best of the group, you're right, they're falling back on, well, my union, or it's not my job. And if you have good leadership, hopefully they can work through that and build an environment where you can feel free to do that. And perhaps those who are going to keep falling back on the union might promote themselves to patron, as a friend of mine would say.
I like that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
We have another question as well, that was sent to me. So this person's asking, I'm a new leader. I'm finding that it's not really to my liking. I'm having trouble distinguishing between the idea that leadership might not be for me or just not being a leader in a demonstrated dysfunctional environment.
Ooh. Those are some really good things. One is you mentioned dysfunctional environment and whether or not they're right for leadership overall. I would try to reach out to a mentor, whether it be someone who within your current organization that has demonstrated some good experience and skills, or someone outside your organization that you really admire. Ask them for some time to talk and see, is it the environment or is it your skills? Because it does sound like perhaps there might be more going on there than just your skills. And it's unfortunate that I've known a few people based on the environment that they were in, and they got pushed out of that environment for whatever reason. And now they don't want to be part of librarianship. But I know that they've got some fantastic skills. So perhaps if they were placed in a different environment, they could be better. So that's why my recommendation is find, whether it be a peer or a mentor, that you can talk this over with. You guys have some good questions.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
I
it's
think-
definitely the
you-
phenomenon of like, maybe it is the environment. Maybe you do possess the skills of being a leader, but it's hard when you're kind of stuck in a situation that's not really working for you. You know, it's
Yes.
always kind of a little heartbreaking when you hear somebody who has great ideas and skills is like, you know, put in a leadership position and then realizes, oh, libraries aren't for me or something. I think,
Right. Yeah.
you know, it's hard. It's hard to make that choice.
Because you've put in so much time and effort to getting where you're at. And absolutely. So I would, like I said, even perhaps you can even job shadow, you know, ask somebody if can you come and shadow in their library, even just go observe. But I think mentoring and having that person to fall back on.
Yeah, definitely like people who have known you previous to the job as well, and just getting their litmus test of like, am I wrong in this? You've known me, you've worked with me, or something like that can be helpful. One more question as well. We have, I wonder about a situation where you're in a leadership role or higher in the work hierarchy than someone who's significantly older than you. They struggle with a younger person being their supervisor and may bully or refuse to listen to that supervisor. How would you navigate that situation?
Oh. I know someone who's working through this at this time right now. And I'm coaching her through it. One, always be respectful. This week we were discussing this with this person I'm helping, and she said that someone told her, do what Michelle Obama said, when they go low, go high. So always try to, one, be respectful and stay on the high side of things. Okay. And as far as, I'm trying to, the perspective of the younger person, obviously it appears that the young person being, okay, that younger person is, let me make sure I got this straight. So the younger person is being bullied somewhat by their person that they're supervising that's older than them.
Yeah, or the person is, the older person is also refusing to listen.
Right. Hopefully there is someone else in that organization that you can turn to. Christy mentioned today ways to sit down and have those conversations. If that's not being successful, then definitely bring somebody else into this, because if it's getting to a bully situation that you feel it's at that point, that could be an HR issue. It could be a harassment. But being direct.
You mentioned in Christy's session the need to kind of follow up via email or put things maybe in writing at a certain point if it gets to reaching, you know, needing that sort of documentation or proof.
Yes, and that's the other thing is, you know, you can have a conversation with somebody and then decide that this is going to occur A, B, and C, but then follow up with an email and say, thank you for meeting with me. Here's what came out of our discussion, you know, A, B, and C. And then we'll plan to meet again at whatever time was set to discuss this further. But, yeah, that, like I said, I guess I'm in reverse. The other person I've been coaching is an older person, and then the supervisor is younger and is somewhat bullying this older person, which then totally brings in another aspect of HR. But if you're in any position, being a supervisor and someone is being belligerent, once again, go through what you can do, and then, if necessary, involve somebody else in that conversation.